This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
And catalogue, and those not compiled by Johnson but by Olds. A very small part of it relates to the person who is the subject of the book, and in that there is such an inaccuracy in the statement of facts as in so solemn an author is hardly excusable, and certainly makes his narrative very unsatisfactory. But what is still worse, there is throughout the whole of it a dark, uncharitable cast, by which the most unfavourable construction is put upon almost every circumstance in the character and conduct of my illustrious friend, who, I trust, will, by a true and fair delineation, be vindicated both from the injurious misrepresentations of this author and from the slighter aspersions of a lady who once lived in great intimacy with him. There is in the British Museum a letter from Bishop Warburton to Dr. Birch on the subject of biography, which, though I am aware it may expose me to a charge of artfully raising the value of my own work by contrasting it with that of which I have spoken, is so well conceived and expressed that I cannot refrain from here inserting it. I shall endeavour, says Dr. Warburton, to give you what satisfaction I can in anything you want to be satisfied in on the subject of Milton, and am extremely glad you intend to write his life. Almost all the life writers we have had before, Toland and Des Maizeaux, are indeed strange, insipid creatures, and yet I had rather read the worst of them than be obliged to go through with this of Milton's, or the other's Life of Boileau, where there is such a dull, heavy succession of long quotations of disinteresting passages that it makes their method quite nauseous. But the verbose, tasteless Frenchman seems to lay it down as a principle that every life must be a book, and, what's worse, it proves a book without a life. For what do we know of Boileau, after all his tedious stuff? You are the only one, and I speak it without a compliment, that by the vigour of your style and sentiments, and the real importance of your materials, have the art, which one would imagine no one could have missed, of adding agreements to the most agreeable subject in the world, which is literary history. November the 24th, 1737. Instead of melting down my materials into one mass, and constantly speaking in my own person, by which I might have appeared to have more merit in the execution of the work, I have resolved to adopt and enlarge upon the excellent plan of Mr. Mason in his Memoirs of Gray. Wherever narrative is necessary to explain, connect, and supply, I furnish it to the best of my abilities. But in the chronological series of Johnson's life, which I trace as distinctly as I can, year by year, I produce, whenever it is in my power, his own minutes, letters, or conversation, being convinced that this mode is more lively, and will make my readers better acquainted with him than even most of those were who actually knew him, but could know him only partially, whereas there is here an accumulation of intelligence from various points by which his character is more fully understood and illustrated. Indeed, I cannot conceive a more perfect mode of writing any man's life than not only relating all the most important events of it in their order, but interweaving what he privately wrote and said and thought, by which mankind are enabled, as it were, to see him live, and to live o'er each scene with him as he actually advanced through the several stages of his life. Had his other friends been as diligent and ardent as I was, he might have been almost entirely preserved. As it is, I will venture to say that he will be seen in this work more completely than any man who has ever yet lived. And he will be seen as he really was, for I profess to write not his panegyric, which must be all praise, but his life, which, great and good as he was, must not be supposed to be entirely perfect. To be as he was is indeed subject of panegyric enough to any man in this state of being, but in every picture there should be shade as well as light, and when I delineate him without reserve, I do what he himself recommended, both by his precept and his example. If the biographer writes from personal knowledge, and makes haste to gratify the public curiosity, there is danger lest his interest, his fear, his gratitude